Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where and when you're listening to this. This is Coffee with Kevin, and this is my coffee. Live, laugh, and love today. And I'm Kevin Martin, believe it or not. Today, today we're going to be talking about something special, not marshmallows, but something special. But today, day in history, big day. Here I am in Boston area. And today is the day that the revolution started. The ride of Paul Revere, April 18th. And here we are. Here we are. We've been a country ever since, our own country ever since. So it's it's a piece of history that's very important for this country in this region that I live in, actually. Now let's talk about what this is all about, because today I'm talking about being your authentic self. And I'm also talking about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. That's a kind of an interesting term that's become popular in the last 10 years, especially maybe the last 5 years. The last 5 years. Glad to see you're making positive image changes. And you're like, thank you, Larry. Yes. I don't know if that was positive. I love marshmallows. And it's nice to have a nice, big, bright smile and big eyes, huh? Um, so, yeah, maybe it wasn't a positive change in my life. Thank you for that, Larry. I appreciate that. Now, let's talk about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is where you don't feel that you're good in the role that you're at. You don't feel that you're right. You too, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you feel like you're an imposter. And I always thought that was really, really interesting. And I thought it was maybe not all that bad, because when I teach people to when they want to change, I said start acting like the change you want before you're there, which is kind of, fake it till you make it. You've heard that before. Everybody doesn't like that term, but I tell you what happens when you do that. I tell you what happens when you do that internally. You're actually kind of tricking your subconscious mind that you're acting that way. And it goes to help you be that way. But you say, Kevin, what about this imposter syndrome? This is where people are actually acting a certain way and it's not working for them. They don't feel right. They don't feel authentic. Well, you see, the thing about fake it till you make it, and the thing why, how it works and why it would work is when you actually bring emotion to it. Your subconscious loves positive emotions. It loves things that feel like it's going to work, and it works with that. In imposter syndrome, you don't have that emotion. Matter of fact, you have a little bit of a negative emotion. From my point of view, the definition of imposter syndrome says you don't feel that you're right. You feel that you're really not as good as it looks. That really sounds like self-esteem. It really sounds like self-esteem. When I did the research in imposter syndrome versus self-esteem, it says, self-esteem is throughout your, all aspects of your life. And imposter syndrome is just in a specific area of your life, like work. Because I think that's where it really got popular, is we're all doing something in our job and we tend to feel like we're not the person that people think we are. We're not as good as people think we are. We're not up to it to do what we're supposed to be doing. That sounds like self-esteem to me. A low self-esteem doesn't come out and look the same in all areas of your life. One of the things that I learned a long time ago about low self-esteem is people who usually brag, people with a big ego, and usually brag about how good they are, have low self-esteem. it blew me away. It blew me away. I have a close relative who is like that, and he talked about how good he was about, in all these things, how magnificent he's done this and this and this. And then he'd whisper, he said, do you think that when he's talking about something he just did, he said, do you think that's right? Did I do it right? Did I do that? So I got to hear both sides. And I think, and I gather, and it is my opinion, that the person with the big ego that brags about their own efforts, they do that to try to make themselves feel better. To try to make themselves feel better. Maybe that's kind of like a different version of imposter syndrome. It was like, okay, or the version of imposter syndrome, because they might be doing pretty well. They just have to build it up more, so because it's coming down inside. Who knows? But that's really, really weird and strange. I think, though, I really do think anyone who's feeling imposter syndrome, there's a little bit of self-worth, self-esteem issue there, even if it's just in one area of your life. Unless circumstances dictate that you are forced into a role and you really didn't think that role in the first place, right? Didn't think you were good enough for that role in the first place. There's a difference. You didn't jump into that role. You didn't say, hey, I can do that role. Someone else said, you do this role. And I don't see that as imposter syndrome to begin with. All right. Yes, you're in a role you don't feel adequate enough. By the way, isn't that self-esteem? But if you got forced into a role somehow and you don't feel adequate enough, that's not imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is when you are in that role and you are doing that role and and everybody else is seeing you as great. And you don't think you're great. There's a personality type, a Y type, should I say, in the Y world. One of the whys we do the things we do is something called mastery. And someone who's mastery is someone who has a deep desire and needs to master as much as they can in any and all subjects that they take on, not just one. A lot of us are like that with one. All right, I need to come up for something for live stream, and I go dig and do the research, and I might do more research. For one single thing, yes, but for all things in parts of my life, all projects I take on, someone who's mastery, they can't help but dig, and they go so much further than they need to. It might be a Toyota that's needed and they want to build a Rolls Royce. That's the kind of thing. So someone that's mastery needs to do that. And they never are satisfied. They think they continually think that they need to find more. So someone might see them as an expert. They see themselves as a researcher trying to, and not having enough research yet. There's a person I know of that he's been painting for 50 years. Everybody sees him as an expert. He sees himself as just a student practically. All right. So maybe that's imposter syndrome, but that's a drive that he has. It's not even a self-esteem thing. That's just a drive that he has. He doesn't see himself in the way others see himself, because he sees himself as constantly needing to go deeper and deeper, get better and better. And there are other issues that can come in with that. So I wanted to talk about authenticity today and wrap this up. Being your authentic self. When you're your authentic self, there is no imposter syndrome. And if your authentic self has humility and you say, everybody says, wow, you're really good at this. And you say, yeah, that's maybe not as good as you think. And you come from humility, not from shame, not from feeling like you're an imposter, but humility. That's okay too. That's okay too. You can be that way. Being your authentic self means knowing who you are. And if I know who I am and I'm in a role that's not me, I may not like it. And if I realize I don't like it, if I realize this role isn't who I am and I'm my authentic self, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to leave it and find the role that allows me to be who I am. That's what it means by being authentic. Now, how do you find who you are? Well, one of the ways I found out to find who I am is the why. Is the why test. It's a great test. It allows you to figure out who you are. Now, are there great surprises? Not always, but it's a confirmation and an affirmation, and a learning more at an in-depth thing about who you are. Yeah, I found out that I love to challenge the status quo. I'm a challenge. I love to challenge the status quo. Now, when I thought about it, it made all the sense in the world because I've been that way all my life. I've been that way all my life. I've been that way when I rebelled against the dress code on my first day of high school, freshman going into a Catholic high school, and I'm wearing an army shirt that buttoned up all the way to the top, and I could wear a tie with it, but it was an army shirt with all the army stuff all over it. I learned that when I was having fun with a good friend of mine who had a flood in her house. I wanted to cheer her up, so I raised my pant legs up to my calves like you're walking through a flood. And I walked around work that day all day long. Work that has several hundred people in the building. I didn't mind being different. I loved being different. So when I learned my why, it was nice to connect the dots and be, and see that, but it didn't surprise me that much because I've always been that way. But I could connect the dots moving forward. I could look to see, okay, if I want to be authentic, if I want to be me, if I want to be that someone who challenges the status quo and does things differently, I want to continue doing what I'm doing. So it feels good. It feels authentic. I don't feel like I'm lying. I don't feel like I'm hiding. I feel like I'm me. And that's what you all need to do, is be authentic. Be the person you need to be. Be the person you want to be. Okay, that's it. Today, in the start of the Revolutionary War, the war that gave us independence a few hundred years ago, here we are. Another thing to work on, besides being authentic, is to learn to live, laugh, and love. Laughing, I think, is authentic. When you really have a really good laugh, when something really tickles you, when something really, inspires you to say, yes, this is so funny. It's so authentic, and you feel so good. A good laugh is almost like a good cry, but it's in a very, it's not, it is a release. A cry is a release, and a laugh is a release. It's like, let's get the good stuff from inside and bring it all the way out. So live, laugh, and love. Learn to authentically live, laugh, and love. This has been Coffee with Kevin. This is my coffee, and I hope you enjoyed a hot cup of coffee, cup of tea, cup of hot chocolate, whatever it is. Maybe even an ice water or a cool drink. That's okay. I'm Kevin Martin with the Center for Next Level Performance, CNLPcoaching.com. If you want to reach out, you can reach out to me on Facebook. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me and Lisa Schermerhorn on CNLPcoaching.com. This has been another Coffee with Kevin. I thank you for being here, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.